involved in organising this conference, although not very much compared to a number of people. And I just think what a marvellous conference it has been, how well organised it's been, what a great welcome we've had here at the London Muslim Centre. And I just think that all of that has made it a day which really surpassed my expectations, and particularly to hear from the brothers and sisters from Europe, from other countries, but also from all the people here. And I just think this shows we have embraced this as a fantastic campaign. We really, today the point isn't just coming together and talking about these things, but what we're going to do really to change them. And I think we're at a very, very dangerous time now in terms of Islamophobia. There is no question that this is a growing phenomenon, certainly in parts of Europe, and is a phenomenon that we have to be very careful about here in Britain. That although Britain is nowhere near as bad as some of the other places that we've heard about today, these things don't respect borders, they don't just remain contained in one place, they do spread if there isn't an organised group of people trying to stop them from spreading, and that's what we're doing here today. And I want to say first of all what I think Islamophobia is about. I mean, of course it's about racism, and a number of people have made this point. We live in a very racist country. We live in a country which has an imperial past, which has over the years has gone to all sorts of other countries and taken their wealth and has told their citizens that somehow they're inferior. And we know that this still goes on. I noticed that the Queen of England went to Ireland this week and didn't quite go far enough to apologise for what the British have done in Ireland over hundreds of years. But did say that she regretted a lot of the deaths and so on, which I suppose is nice after all these years of people being called terrorists, being locked up, or being tortured, and all the things that happened to the Irish, just as now is happening to sections of the Muslim community, that they were called terrorists and extremists and all these things. Now, it's a very, very different thing. We're told that Irish terrorism isn't the threat that it was. But exactly the same happened to Irish families. Their houses were raided, their kids were put in prison, some of the older people were put in prison, and new laws were passed to make it harder for them to organise. We don't want to wait another 100 or 200 years before they start apologising for what they've done to Muslims in this country in the 21st century, or for what they've done to the Iraqis or the Afghans, or what they've done to the our government and the European governments and the United States government are involved in a series of wars around the world, mainly against people of Muslim faith. And actually, if you are going to justify these wars, you have to make out that these people are the other, are the extremists, are the terrorists, are people who don't have the same supposedly civilised values that we have. This is the kind of dialogue that they're trying to put across. So it's about the wars. And the point that has been made by a number of the speakers today, that 9/11, the war on Afghanistan and the subsequent wars changed the whole way in which Islamophobia grew and the way in which it was institutionalised at the highest level by government, by media, by laws, by all of these kind of things. So that's a big thing to fight against. The third thing we have to fight against is the present condition under which we live, which is a severe economic crisis around the world. And what they are trying to do is to divide and rule us. They say there's no money to pay for hospitals and schools and all the other welfare and all the other things, and therefore we have to make sacrifices. And what better to happen than that you don't blame David Cameron, who's a millionaire, like nearly all of his cabinet, that we don't blame the people from Eden who are imposing these cuts on us, but we do blame our neighbours next to us who have a different coloured skin or a different religion or a different in Britain, the Red Green Alliance that people have talked about, because the left and the Muslims have worked together for the last 10 years, and that is a unity which is not going to be divided. And we will continue to do it over Palestine, over the war, over racism, and over every other question. And I do believe these things have to be linked up. I'd like to see the Muslim community, it already is mobilising, the points that Alex has made about the strikes in Tower Hamlets and the support they've got, but on the 26th of this march, we had a huge demonstration of trade unions. We need to build on these things, and we need the Muslim community demonstrating over those issues, as well as the issues of war and Palestine. Because all of these things are connected, and if we win over one, we will win over the other things as well. And that is why it's important. And that's why it's important we should reject the arguments that are now being put forward. They talk about integration, that people in Britain need to learn the language, need to abide by the law, as if most immigrants in this country don't learn the language. Of course they learn the language. Actually, they're much better at learning languages, most people have to come and work in Britain, than the people from Britain who go and live in other countries who don't bother going out. I don't know how many of the soldiers in Iraq can speak Arabic, probably not very many. I don't know how many in Afghanistan all of the languages there. But this idea of integration is a false idea. The problem is not that people look different or dress differently. The problem is the way in which governments try to divide and rule, and that is what we need to fight against. And remember the lesson of Germany. The German Jews were the most integrated Jews in the whole of Europe. They were very respected in many areas of Germany. Many of them were wealthy. Many of them had very, very secure jobs or businesses in those places. The attack on the Jews was not about that they were separate. It was not about that they spoke a different language. It wasn't about those things. It was about what the fascists tried to do to divide and weaken the working class. And that is the lesson that we need to remember today. So when we talk about all these things, we have to understand the first thing that we have done today, this is the second conference which we've had. The first one we had to have curtailed because the attack on the flotilla, the Mavri Mara, we all demonstrated in the afternoon, and we would have had to curtail this one if something like that had happened. But I think it's been a much more successful conference for being the whole day, for having so many people here, and all these things. And the first thing that we have done is to stand up and say we're not going to take Islamophobia, and we are going to organise against it. And that is the first lesson we have to take away from this conference today. This isn't just we've heard good speeches and all these things, it's about what we can do. We've talked about the freedom train going to Paris, and I hope that we can organise that, and I hope that will be a big success. But we also need to take the spirit of this conference into every locality, into every trade union branch, into every college, into every community, and we say to people, we are going to organise now for the right of Muslims to dress how they want, to worship how they want, to do all these things, to defend every mosque, and to fight against a government which is doing this. You see, we have real enemies in terms of the EDL, in terms of the BNP, in terms of the racists, the organised racists in this country. But let's be honest, they're a small force at the moment. They were the people who made the speech on the eve of the EDL demonstration, and that was David Cameron, the civilised product of Eton and Oxford, who is supposed to be against racism. He's the person who made that speech. And he made another speech. The two worst Islamophobic speeches this year have come from the Prime Minister. That is the truth. And that means we have to fight the government and the government policies, not just over Islamophobia, but all the policies which are cutting working people's living standards, which are making us worse off, which are doing all the things where they allow the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. Whether you're religious or not, most of us do not agree with that philosophy. We do believe that actually there should be equality, there should be justice, there should be fairness. These are basic principles which are principles that we all follow. So I hope that we will continue to do this. I hope we will continue to build this coalition, this enough coalition. I think it's been a tremendous success so far, and I think we have a huge amount of work to do. And whatever differences we might have politically or in other ways, we surely have to realise, and this is a lesson for the whole of the left internationally, but even some of the left in this country, because some of the left in this country spend their time attacking this alliance and attacking what we're doing here. The lesson is, whatever our political differences, we unite against the main enemy, and then we can discuss our differences in the future. As someone said, if you take the alternative view, you don't have the opportunity to discuss your differences, because if Hitler comes to power, or if right-wing extremism comes to power, then there is no chance to discuss these kind of things. We fight to defeat the main enemy, which is why we should be campaigning against the war, over Palestine, against what the Israelis are doing. There's protests going to be on Monday night when Dow's meeting is happening. There are Obama is coming to address both houses of Parliament next week. We're going to demonstrate outside Buckingham Palace, close down Guantanamo, no wars, freedom for Palestine. Final point, I think it was Liz Feckerty who spoke earlier, who said what we need is a mass civil rights movement in this country as well. It is not acceptable in the 21st century that people should be second-class citizens or should in any way be treated as second-class citizens. This is what we are fighting for. Let's fight for complete equality. Let's fight against Islamophobia. And if we do those things properly, let's fight for a better society and a better world for our children.